Imagine building one of the most culturally significant bands of the 21st century. Now imagine doing that while experimenting radically in a genre where copying others is a proven path to success. I'm obviously talking about Daft Punk, the phenomenal faceless duo. Their sophomore album, Discovery, is considered the 140th best album ever, and their fourth album, released 8 years ago after their prior studio album, hit #1 on basically every country's charts. And I bet your grandma knows the lyrics to Get Lucky by now. Pharrell, who sung on that track, said that Daft Punk was responsible for the rise of contemporary electronic dance music. And James Murphy of LCD's Sound System, a big deal in his own right, name-checked Daft Punk multiple times in his music. So how the hell did these guys manage to succeed while literally wearing bags on their heads for interviews? So in this video, I'm going to talk about how Daft Punk got so big, not just despite, but because they broke nearly every marketing rule. I can't believe I have to say this, but I may need to tell people what Daft Punk is. Daft Punk is an electronic music duo formed in 1993. Their style is said to be a combination of house music with funk, techno, disco, hip-hop, indie rock, and pop. This is both accurate and comprehensive summary, and a lacking one too. And when it comes to the name Daft Punk, well, it comes from an insult a music reviewer hurled at them back when they were an indie rock band by the name of Darlin. The fact that they made it big by literally taking a mean word of a critic is the best reverse Uno card I've ever seen played. Now, when it comes to their real names, Wikipedia will tell you them, and even worse, tell you that they're human, which is just such a baseless lie, because the real truth is that they're robots. On September 9th, 1999, a synthesizer exploded, and when they regained consciousness, they had turned into robots. And indeed, this is what people know them for. If you don't even know one Daft Punk song, you know them as the guys who wear robot helmets. It's an iconic bit of branding genius. Everyone knows who you are, even without your name. And I think it's very important to talk about this before even getting to their music. Because aggressive avoidance of celebrity status is a much a signature of Daft Punk's work than banger beats and samples that slap. Both guys in their teen years saw Phantom of the Paradise, a 1974 movie. In it, a guy who is grasping for fame gets horribly maimed by some music equipment and transformed into a half-human, half-machine figure with a robotic voice. It was an unsubtle, surrealist statement about the exploitive nature of the music industries and the dangers of fame. I personally believe that this movie clicked with those guys because they saw it at a young age. They took its imagery to come up with their helmets, they got the idea of hiding their faces from that movie, and they may very well have gotten a disdain for celebrity status from it as well, although who can really say? What we do know is that they collaborated with the film's composer on their 2013 album, Random Access Memories. That's just not a thing you do unless a movie really makes its mark on you. Daft Punk could be shopping at your local Costco right now, and not a soul there would recognize them. That's on purpose. They're an anti-fame, anti-establishment to the core, which has an interesting implications for both their marketing strategy and their music. It's also how they can make crowd-pleasing mega hits show up in ad spots for the Gap and not seem like massive sellouts. Even their breakup in 2021 was anti-fame. Zero drama, just a bizarre video of them walking off into the desert and exploding. Now let's talk about their music and their storied musical career. If you want a comprehensive review of Daft Punk's discography, check out this video by Mike the Snare. He gives their work the 30 minutes it deserves, as I can regrettably only give you the radio edits in this video. Their first album, Homework, dropped in 1997, and it gave us soul raw but innovative dance music such as Daft Punk. Their music at the time was more similar to their peers in the French house scene, but even early on in their career, you could clearly hear them developing their signature sound. Undeterred by their transfiguration into robots in 1999, Daft Punk dropped Discovery in 2001. This gave us hits like Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, One More Time, Face to Face, Digital Love, and Aerodynamic. This is when Daft Punk developed their signature sound, which countless imitators have attempted to copy, but no one has managed to nail it, and the closest is probably Cross by Justice. They then went on to create Human After All, which was their weakest album until the songs were remixed into a stunning live album, Alive 2007. It is considered the 18th best live album of all time. They also went on to create the soundtrack for Tron Legacy in 2010. And then at the second apex of career, Daft Punk dropped Random Access Memories in 2013, collaborating with the one and only
Giorgio.
Other collaborators include Panda Bear, Julian Casablancas from The Strokes, Nile Rodgers and Pharrell Williams, who managed to chop the charts with Get Lucky, as well as some other hit singles like Lose Yourself to Dance. After Random Access Memories, Daft Punk started to slow down, but increasingly worked with others to help create their works, with one of the major feathers in their cap working with The Weeknd on his Starboy album in 2016. With all that in mind, now we can talk about how Daft Punk transcended singles and albums to become an everlasting brand. Daft Punk only followed one marketing rule: product market fit. I said that Daft Punk broke all the marketing rules, but that's not quite true. In fact, there are only two real marketing rules that matter: make something worthwhile and tell people you've made something worthwhile.
Take a look at this.
Jesus Christ,
That right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay?
In the world of dance music, that means making great music and giving great performances. Daft Punk has absolutely done that with all their albums, except for Human After All achieving critical acclaim. However, Daft Punk threaded a seemingly impossible needle. They managed to please the hardcore dance music crowd, record shop owners, and normal people at the same time. And to quote LCD Sound System's Losing My Edge, so why does this work? I'd argue it's because Daft Punk has a very interesting musical technique where every few measures they'll add an element to their song. The drums will pick up, perhaps the synth line will come in, maybe they'll add some vocals. What this does is it keeps a repetition that is so important to dance music without it feeling stale. This technique is part of why I believe Daft Punk has so many fans around the world. Because they use 5 paradoxical marketing techniques to achieve superstardom without revealing their faces. Now, you and I both know that being a good musician doesn't guarantee success. Daft Punk was certainly well positioned to blow up massively, but the fact they did is no accident. Daft Punk were actually brilliant at marketing, even though they were anti-marketing, anti-fame, and anti-spotlight. The first one being is that Daft Punk established a clear brand by never saying anything at all. Daft Punk's brand is heavily based in mystery. We don't know what they look like, we don't know what they think about cultural politics, no one knows what the relationship between the two look like, we don't even know why they broke up. And that's the point. We're supposed to keep wondering. We're supposed to see the reflective helmets as mirrors, grafting our own values onto cold chrome and glass. Even in their interviews, which are extremely rare, they basically don't say anything. That's because Daft Punk is experts in circumlocution. They're very indirect in what they say. Then 15 minutes, you check the fridge and you realize you don't know anything else about who they are. Their helmets are logos, yes, but where most logos seek to be full of meaning, Daft Punk is meant to strip it away. Yeah, you talk about the robots and how cute the gimmick is, but at the end of the day, because we know so little about them, we must talk about them in terms of music they make and the deliberate actions they take. There is no celebrity gossip about Daft Punk to detract from their image. Secondly, Daft Punk earned media attention by avoiding media attention. Because Daft Punk never revealed their faces, rarely took interviews, and never said anything of importance when they did, Daft Punk have built up a reputation of being elusive. To land an interview about Daft Punk was to do the nigh impossible. This would normally be a huge mistake. In fact, I actively push my marketing clients to seek out attention because the hermit route seldom works. But in Daft Punk's case, it worked very well. In 2013, when news of a 4th album was on the way, I would frequently search for more information, but found very, very little. But when meaningful news did come out, like a 15-second song teaser, it got an enormous amount of attention. All the online magazines like Pitchfork, Consequence of Sound, and NME had to talk about Daft Punk and their progress towards their next great work. This plays back into their brand of being unknowable and mysterious figures. By depriving the media environment of any meaningful content, the slightest scrap of news took on great significance. This is the same logic that makes fancy restaurants give you tiny portions. They know you'll savor it more. And the third thing is Daft Punk cashed in but never sold out. You might think that Daft Punk is some sort of anti-capitalist group, the kind that might burn £1 million British like the KLF did in 1994, but that's just not so. Daft Punk has been in commercials, they've worked with pop stars as big as The Weeknd and Kanye West, and they're not afraid to network and get paid well. When Daft Punk was most active, sellout was still a devastating insult. The sellout meant to give up your creative interest and purity for a paycheck. These days, you don't hear that term so much because everyone is broke as hell. This once again ties back into their mystique when they started in commercials or decided to start working with big stars. It seemed like they were doing it for fun and for art. We know how much they shun fame, and it's not a stretch to assume they feel the same way about grotesque amount of money too. Perhaps the most important though, despite working with bigger and bigger stars later in their career, Daft Punk kept the quality high. I'd argue that Daft Punk's work with The Weeknd was the best we had going for him before Blinding Lights came out. They took their sweet time between albums, seldom publishing anything less than stellar. Even when they were working with a big Disney film, Tron Legacy, they put their time and care into creating a soundtrack that, while it doesn't stand on its own, worked perfectly within the context of the film. Which brings me to my fourth point. Daft Punk was consistent, but always changing. You recognize Daft Punk immediately when you hear them. They have a consistent trademarks. You can hear it in their sweet honey-dipped vocoder vocals. You can feel it in the 1970s soul, funk, and disco samples. It's there in the moments where they work real human tenderness into an electronic soundscape, like in Something About Us. But every single album was very different than the one before. Homework was a dense brick of late 1990s house music bangers, Discovery brought in a certain airness and lightness that made it too great for radio play, and Human After All was a grungy mix of sequel synths and ultra-repetitive lyrics that mixed super well into Live 2007. Itself an innovative album that showed people how electronic acts can actually play live. And then finally, to top it all off, Random Access Memories was a 1970s and 1980s throwback album featuring, at times, full orchestras and unaltered vocals. Sure, all the dance floor tricks were still at play, but Random Access Memories was a surprising analog sound. Daft Punk took their sweet time between albums. Daft Punk always sounded like Daft Punk, but when they were putting out new albums, you'd never be able to guess what was coming next. Finding that balance of novelty and familiarity is a trick that even the best marketers can seldom manage. Which brings me to my final point. Daft Punk attracted the famous, but never bent for them. Most of the time, when artists reach out to people more famous than them, they change to meet them. Daft Punk said, take it or leave it. If you wanted to work with Daft Punk, they would either produce your album, or you'd be a guest on theirs. Rumours has it that they didn't even tell their collaborators the context in which their vocals or other contributions would be used. Now normally that would close a lot of doors. I tell my marketing clients not to make too many demands, especially not to people with bigger audiences. But Daft Punk is Daft Punk, and they could get away with it. I could cite a lot of examples, but one stands out about the others, and that would be
Giorgio.
He's a big deal. He basically invented disco as we know it. Without him, there's no Daft Punk. He's like their spiritual father. So of course they collaborated with him on a song, but it went a little bit different, and here's what happened.
I start to play piano and I sing and we compose a song, and they said, no, let us do the music. You just talk. You just tell the story of your life.
And after him telling his story of his life, they crafted it into a beautiful 9-minute song, which is just a wondrous thing to listen to. It takes enormous guts to be able to tell one of your biggest inspirations and heroes that you'll be calling the shots, but that's exactly what Daft Punk did. They never made even one appearance that was inconsistent with their mysterious image. They never made a single that they didn't want associated with their name, so even as they collaborated with big stars, they never once diluted their brand. So we come together for my final thoughts on the matter. Daft Punk managed to become some of the biggest celebrities of the 21st century, without even showing their faces. Both band members would deny it to the day they die, but they are brilliant at marketing. You have to be brilliant to know which rules to break and which ones to follow, and to know how precisely to break them as well. They turned mysteriousness into a calling card, and that got the media to eat out of their hands. Their quality seldom dipped, and their sounds never got stale. They were relentless guardians of their brand, making big celebrities and even their personal heroes work within their rules. All of this was possible, not only because of their business acumen, but because they were just so damn good at making music too. Even though they're not cranking out end music anymore, we can still learn lessons from them. If you liked that video, then subscribe, and make sure to ring that bell so you can see when our next video goes live. And, talking of those videos, why don't you check out one of them today? And if nothing takes your fancy, check out weirdmarketingtales.com where we have all kinds of weird articles written just for you.